Hi, folks. It's Thursday, July 28th, and Ron will be here in a minute. Well, a few minutes.
Hi, everybody. Well, I hope everyone is doing fairly well or reasonably well. There are a few questions. One that is really, from my point of view, uh, extremely important, and the questioner really wants to remain anonymous, and I'm going to align with that. But other questions along a similar line have come up over the years, and it all stems around the idea that when an individual is attempting to grow in whatever method you basically believe in, the issue is that the individuality or the individual's personality has a deep level engagement or need with maintaining itself the way it's being constructed. If you haven't noticed that, then you've missed something because it is real. And one of the things that really help that to occur is a kind of subtlety of energy that allows an individual to be at least fundamentally willing to watch themselves and how they function without the idea of giving themselves a hard time or thinking they have succeeded in some way uh, and have changed everything within them, because that's not real. What does happen in every situation, unless with one proviso, that there is an internalization that occurs that is far beyond the understanding of us as in our normal day to day, and that will shift our version of how and who we think we are and why we are that way, and the need we consistently have to remain in a particular way that is valued by the personality itself. Okay, that sounds confusing. But when you're dealing with inner growing and even attempting to be aware of stuff, you invariably become aware of the fact that you will perhaps become aware of the fact, and hopefully will, that you are sold on the idea of remaining to some degree the same as you were before. Now, this is an unconscious thing. It really is unconscious. Therefore, it's very difficult to see. And chances are you'll miss it. But missing it is part of the growing process. Also, slowly beginning to recognize that this is a theme that is valued in some way for some purpose within you and maintained so that you can consider yourself of some value. Because without this sense of value that you may have one way or the other, fundamentally, you will consider yourself not valuable, and it's not real. So some will have a sense of feeling negative in some way or judging themselves as negative in some way. And some will have a sense of elevating themselves in some way. And some will do both intermittently. In other words, you'll consider yourself, whatever comes, let's say, from your mental or emotional responsive system, to be one of the only ways that might be valuable. In fact, uh, there are many, many ways of looking at life, including perhaps your own, obviously. So the next dilemma is then how do we let ourselves so called off the hook of being exactly the way we were before in our early engagements, but just more subtle so that we can't perceive it? It's very difficult. One of the systems that are age old is helping other people, getting involved with others in some way, in such a way that you attempt to help, and through the helping, you begin to notice that it's not always easy to help other people. So you find out the methodology that you consider valuable in terms of helping others. So you may help others and they look at you and they don't accept your help. Well, then you react. The reaction itself tells you that your relationship with helping is personalized for you. Your methodology is related directly to how you believe it's the only way to do things. And legitimately, that's pretty well real all across the board. So you stop helping, and you have good reason to, from your perspective. So the kind of helping I'm talking about is relating to helping in a manner that is subtler. And whether people accept it or not, that's relative to them and their understanding of their need. And your reaction to them not understanding or responding to your help, whatever that may be, is basically on you and your method or belief that you think they should be automatically helped the way you think they need to be. And in fact, it's all about you. It isn't about them at all. They'll, in a kind of a way, they could take what you think is valuable and not use it, but it might get them to think about something else that might be helpful to them, or they might be resentful about you even attempting to help them. Take that little package and apply it to yourself. If you are trying to help yourself, you may actually do something that might be helpful to you. And then you may find that your internalizations, your unconscious, one can say, becomes a little resentful that you are attempting to help you in a fashion that in a kind of a way implies that how you were before was not good, was not right, was devalued. In fact, that reflex reaction that you may have without even noticing you have it is a natural tendency that everyone has inside themselves related to fear and hurt. There's so many hurts deep down in everybody's whole life. And There's no single way of engaging that will obliterate those hurts, those resentments at having to take a look at them, even bring up a sense of stonewalling within everybody in a kind of a way. Stonewalling, why should I change? But you may not notice this is what's going on. It's legitimate. The system that you've created, you value. I don't care what the system is. If you could only think that other people have the same thing going on inside of them, the system that they've constructed is of great value to them. And they will see your system relative to their hurts. It's not a negative thing. It's just what it is. So, being patient and understanding about your own system and recognizing your view about it may not be perfect doesn't devalue you and doesn't devalue your system. I know it's difficult to consider, but at many different ages, no matter what ages they are, that you could be in a process of learning to be something other than how you have been before. Doesn't necessarily imply that you're a bad person or a perfect person or anywhere in between. You're just a person. This is the dilemma. Saying that you're just a person, for some, is kind of a slap in the face. To be honest, all of us are just people. And we're interacting with life the best way we can relative to our current way of seeing how that might be. And the vulnerability that's involved with that, to consider anything untoward about it, is very difficult for anyone. So as you're growing, you will notice yourself, hopefully notice yourself, because this is not always true. Being as you were before, in some moments, not all, and you will focus on those moments and see them, and you can have a reaction to them. You can consider yourself looking at something from a negative perspective, looking at you from a negative perspective. It's not going to help. If you could look at yourself and just, I see that. Not much I can do about it, but I see it. And I understand that this may be part of what I will see as I incrementally, little by little, grow and slowly move away from that judgment, or slowly move away from that sense of being more important than anybody else. Because these two opposites can flip back and forth because they're on the edges of how we function. And there's a lot in between them. Learning is not an easy thing. None of us get it right. Right meaning becoming a perfect person and then walking through life as if we are perfect and all that sort of stuff. It just is not real. But Acting has been a big part of how to function in life. And as a matter of fact, we're trained an awful lot in our world about how to act. And I mean act as in a drama. Act as if we're valued more than others. How to do that, to insist on being that way. And it gives fruit of some kind, gives me a sense of value somehow. In fact, it holds you in that particular acting position. I don't care what it is. It could be in a hurting position, could be in a sense of, oh, you name it. It won't matter what you name. All of these images, these symbolic references, are part of how we have learned to engage with life for the purpose of making sense of it. Each of us has these things, the stories we engage with, the tales that we are about, the hopes, the wishes, the attempts that we make, the failures, the successes. So-called failures help us in a way. Sometimes even the successes help us to see broader than we could see before in relationship to an understanding of what we believe we've already considered valuable and how to function and why to function that way. If you watch television programs, you'll see the acting. Some of it will affect you, some of it won't. And unknown to you, you'll do some of that acting. You watch other people and you do the same thing. The dilemma is when you're being honest with yourself or attempting to be, you'll go through the same stages that were cultivated in your early lifetime. And you'll use those stages purposefully to help you feel more comfortable in your growing process. Excuse me. So there's no negativity in it, but learning how to perceive it is not that simple. And none of us get it perfect. So continue the best you can. Try to pull back from judging yourself. Try to pull back from being so-called having the only idea. Intellectually, emotionally, physically, our construction as a personality does what it can, and it will do reflexively what it can. The interloper is becoming aware of what we do. And nobody likes interlopers. The interloper of oh my goodness, I never saw that before. Now, maybe I should keep doing that because that's really good. Gets me this, gets me that, gets me this, gets me that. Depends on what you're really interested in. If you know that that is occurring, you could learn to soften it down. You could. Doesn't mean you will. All the time. Even if you think you are all the time, if you're honest with yourself, you will use the judgment that you may use on others on yourself when you become more conscious. That means you're still doing what you did before. But it doesn't mean you haven't made adjustments. And adjustments are there. And they're incremental. That means small adjustments. Becoming aware inside at that level enables you to move past the injunction of your personality's views. In other words, you're susceptible. You become susceptible to engaging with higher states that don't follow how you think things should be. And that is a valuable piece, but not so simple. I've met many people in this world, of course, and so have you. And they say, well, this is the way things should be. And for a moment, it may be true. However, you live in many moments. I live in many moments. And sometimes things are very true. And sometimes things cannot be used in the same context in a new moment. But it's easy to habitually engage as if there's only one way to see things. I wish everybody the very best in this one. This is not so easy. This is why spiritual growing is not a real link with higher states in many people's minds, because it follows their own personalized belief systems. Naturally, how would you understand something except through you? How would you experience something and then determine what that experience was except through you? If you're okay with not having or recognizing that you're unfolding constantly a new way to look at life and allow yourself to be a little confused from time to time, then you'll only have one response. And I would say that that is very difficult for most people. One thing I've noticed in my life for sure, there are so many things going on and so many ways of understanding these things. Almost convinced that life is tremendously metaphorical and symbolic and relates to, we understand it and interpret it through stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes those stories are spot on. And sometimes they're just not. But how you approach them in relationship to how you think things should be, sort of, is in process all the time. If you can understand that interpretation is really an active process, then that should be as confusing as anything. In other words, what I'm saying is, we don't always see things as they are. We see them as we think they are, as we believe they might be. Understand that that's part of the growing process. Tomorrow, with all due respect to everybody, you may see things differently. I might see things differently. I used to say all the time. I still think it. I reserve the right to change my mind at any given moment. And the reason why is it's valuable to continue to learn. I understand that many and most know that that's an important feature of life. Our reactions, as ancient or early as they can be, are also a part of this frisson, this vibrating sense of reflex that we have, sensitive reflex that we have. Be patient with it. Don't always agree with it the best you can. In confrontations, you'll always agree with it. That's the problem. Confrontations are based on a relationship with being fearful of losing some face, some sense of value. This is true for all of us. The opposite of that, of course, is thinking that you can fool everybody in the whole world. It's not real. It's just a thing that's there. Growing is a dilemma, but it's a wonderful dilemma. And all of you are growing. Please remember the best you can in your individual growing process that you are cultivating a system to become more aware than anything that you come up with, that you'll be receptive to another state, not determine another state. That's a different thing. And that is kind of against the concept of, let's say, a humanistic concept, no offense to humanism. Whereas the individual thinks that we've been trained to think that way, that we are more right than some other individual. It may be true in an instant, but we can be just as inappropriately thinking in another instant. And it's often true that can be true. However, that may work out for you. So that is something that I thought I would bring up, because for those of you who are actually attempting to use the energy exercises and attempting to grow internally, preparing for an interaction with another state, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, then you can understand how difficult it is to move through the barrier of belief, symbolic reference, ideas. And when you're working with yourself, you're trying to cultivate a kind of rendering of what makes sense to you. And of course, then you interfere with it by considering it the only way that things must make sense to you. This is a dilemma all over the world, in philosophy and religions, and it's everywhere. So that means it's in us. If it's everywhere, it's in us. So what you're trying to consider is an engagement in your meditations, little bit by little bit, in your understanding, little bit by little bit, that there's more, no matter what, how it sits with you, whether you perceive a little bit beyond per, the previous personalizations that you had, then you open up a little bit, and there's more. And you engage in some way that has been a wonderful target area for you, and you will find there's more. And in the meantime, attempt to live life and be normal, sort of. Engage as if this is a relationship that you have with learning how to live just slightly differently, but engaging in this world as if nothing is going on that's any different than anybody else. This is a key. It's a key that's often forgotten. And unfortunately, it's a key that holds people once you begin to think that you've really done something extra special. It can hold you in that place, and you'll forget that there's more. And that's only a beginning. If you look around, you can find that that's true. Look in yourself first. That's a key thing. Always look in yourself. Ask the questions of you. Don't devalue you. Don't elevate you. Ask the questions. You may not have an answer. An answer may occur that suits where you are in that moment. It may help you. The vulnerability to another state can occur. Yes, of course, you have a mind. Yes, of course, you have reactions to what you believe already without even knowing half the time what you do believe. But recognize, if you can, that all of that is preparation for a next step. This will be helpful, invariably. I wish everyone well with that, as I would have wished myself well. I have another question here. This one's from Carol Martin. Excuse me. She says, great purple shirt last Thursday. Oh, it's about 3 weeks ago. It's the only one I have. It just happened to be on a hanger next to the blue one that I had the day before. While basic development may be the first aspect, she says, to tend to, I wonder if you could speak to frequency. How is it related to rays and personality? Oh, God. I think that's a great question. It's a dilemma, though, but it's a great question. I remember Dr. Douglas Baker saying to me, Ron, would you talk about the rays? And I said, honestly answered, and he would expect nothing else. I said, I will not talk about them the way they're written about. He said, yeah, I understand. So here's what I would say about the rays. All of you have seen a prism. PRISM. and you see the beautiful colors like a rainbow, the droplets of water. What's your prism like? With a certain kind of light coming in, not exactly white light, but a light from the sun, or light, one could say. And it splits up in reds and blues and greens and oranges and yellows and purple, violets, different colors. So these have been called the rays, especially by Theosophy and by others as well. And they've attributed those rays to energies that some have been purported to perceive around the body, coming out of chakras, for example. And therefore, they say, oh, this chakra should be this color, this chakra should be that color. If you have a personality that this is this color, that's really bad because that's really willful and rumbly. That's red I'm talking about. This is a big dilemma. The naming of these colors and what they mean, fine. In Theosophy, you can read Anna Besant's book, and I think it's even touched by, and that'd be Alice Bailey, and I'm not sure Madame Blavatsky has spoken about them, overly focused on them, but nonetheless has talked about them. Bailey did speak quite a lot about it. However, also Edgar Casey Group and I think Dion Fortune and a number of other, Tansley, I think, many people have written a whole bunch of stuff about it. Where, and you can read that. It wouldn't hurt you to read all kinds of things on everything and anything. But the difficulty with it, you're going to get an idea in your mind where you think this is the only way to look at stuff, because that's a human thing to do. And then you will support that by your own belief. And then if you happen to see them, you will fit that into what you believe it must be like. This is where the difficulty lies. Each one of these frequencies can be affected by other frequencies. And they change colors. For those of you who have been artistic, not autistic, artistic, you know by now the colors blend together. If you're looking at painting, you'll look to see if it's a sunny day, look to see if there's any greenery around. You look to see if there are a few clouds. And if there's a little bit of snow, you've got to include those colors in that sort of whitish snow because there's reflection. Okay, fine. But take a look at these rays. There are certain garish coloring that can occur that may be relative to a coarser aspects of a frequency. Watch and see how difficult this is. Subtler colors of the same frequency may be relative to a more subtle or gentler aspect of that particular form. For example, if you looked at red, you saw red in a person's around a person, you could call it or call it whatever you want. I mean, we love to call things energy field. I like to call it energy field around or involved with the person, or if you have a much deeper kind of clairvoyance, you'll see a frequency related to a very particular um, chakra or zephyrat. And you will know then that this tone, frequency, tone is relative to that particular frequency. They speak in a tone related to that. And for example, if it were red, then one could say, if you looked at the theosophical orientation, that would be will and power. If they had a solar plexus that was that color and it was very bright, then they would have a strong personalized version of being the only right thing that could ever happen. Well, personalities do that all the time. Not only when they're of a first rate or a red frequency. You can have a yellow frequency at the solar plexus, and nobody can change your mind about something. If it's coarser on the coarser levels, if it's on a different level, you might be interested in every thought, every relationship with concepts or ideas. If it's on a red frequency and it's very kind of subtle, not necessarily only pink, but subtle, a subtlety of striation, then you recognize that that individual has a concentrated willingness to engage with and understand something, and it's looking for something beyond the surface. It's looking for something deeper in its understanding, looking to understand the individual's present position and place in existence. No negativity is attached to that. They're not doing that. They're looking, how can I help this person? Of course, we don't come up with these ideas naturally because we're into assessing how another person would be. Why should it be this way? It should be this way. You are that way if you have this, and you're that way if you have this, and you're that way if you have this. Really, really surface stuff. Without that surface stuff, we could never have a beginning. A movement towards attempting to understand beyond that surface level. So there's no negation in that surface stuff. But there are opinions galore. And the need to have those opinions to elevate the personality is tremendous. Not negative, but part of the cultivation of a broader spectrum in relationship to understanding. We run into different ideas that lay on the surface, or let's say the forefront of the next thing that we need to know. I need to begin to understand. We run into them. Oh, here's an idea, and an idea is there. Different than what you thought before. We have a little bit of, let's say, anticipation goes on in our intellects and our emotional dispositions around this kind of thing. That's at least a precursor to being receptive to understanding, or let's say, experiencing a kind of recognition of a state that's just beyond the one that we exist in. This is one of the reasons why I've been reticent to talk about these rays, because I know that there's a movement towards understanding them differently than they've been understood before. Next stage, which means, of course, people are going to think that how people understand things now is wrong. It's not like that. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about recognizing an additional subtlety, an additional understanding, so that we can get to another level of understanding. It's quite different than being subject to the personality's way of making sense of everything. Yet the personality has to do that at this stage of the game, at this stage of understanding. If things are too far out, personality will automatically respond, react, duck. It's just too much, because it kind of has to make less sense so that the individual isn't devalued. Each and every one of these so-called rays or emanations or vibrations or frequencies are literally like running your fingers down a piano. Different key, different tone, different subtlety. And of course, for a long time, the association to music with these rays has been looked upon as quite normal and natural. And in a way, it's true. We are very interested in music, all kinds of it. And it has an effect on our personality, on our emotional disposition for sure. And if you are interested in notes, and you have that kind of a mind where you are listening to a classical piece or any other kind of a piece, and you're trying to recognize the note movement and the engagement with those frequencies, then, and many people do, then you're quite pleased and happy that you can do that, because it's part of like reading paper, reading anything, reading a book. At these levels, there are certain things that we can do and certain things that we can't. And certain things we can understand, and certain things we're not open to allowing ourselves to understand. You've run into these things, I'm sure. Certainly I have. And attempted nonetheless to try and make sense of what it is that we can or can't understand. Growing is kind of like that. We have these moments where we have tremendous understanding, and then we have these moments when all of that disappears. And we're subject to almost another entry into a different level of understanding. This is related to spiritual growth. This is being spiritual. And this is difficult for us because we nurture deeply and sincerely beliefs that we encounter that make some sense to us. We are very vulnerable to things that don't make sense to us. So we downplay them. Or we even downplay people we don't quite relate to, sadly. Because the problem is, our tonal reference doesn't relate to other people's engagement with life. You can see that in your own life. Soften that down the best you can. It'll be not so simple. Understanding deeper, if you can't, seems to have no relevance until you can. Carol goes on and she says, you said in a recent talk that we may have a different frequency this life. How could we lose and obtain frequencies between lives? Ultimately, from my perspective, Carol, ultimately, at some heavenly day, other period of existence, we may be able to have energy move through us, through different centers, or one center, or dozen, or sorry, shouldn't have said that, a multiplicity of centers, where more than one frequency can move through that center for the purpose of helping others to grow beyond where they are, without them knowing and without you considering that it comes from you rather than it comes through you. Because these systems, these forms that we are forms that we use to survive on these planes. So if you consider lifetimes that you might have been exposed to, and the utilization of these lifetimes to engage with certain frequencies, various frequencies, then you come in this one, and you come in with one that may be slightly different than the ones that you've used before. And you're trying to cultivate and engage with life with this one. And it might be a little coarser than other ones that you've used before, because you've used them before and learned how to use them a little bit more than this one. Then you're actually being extremely constructive within yourself, within that whole reservoir, that soul reservoir of frequencies. You call them personalities, so I'll call them frequencies, combinations of frequencies, where you are now adding a different combination than you've had before to the mix. And you are constantly developing as a being of consciousness that can be more open to helping others where their need is, as opposed to where the personality thinks they need the help. Because I'm looking at this from an energetic point of view, not a personalization point of view. The only way we can look at this very well is through a personalization point of view. This makes it very difficult to understand that the mix that we're involved with often is related directly to the cultivation of how we set up a personality construction using the energy that's operating automatically through us. And if it's a new frequency, then we're adding that capability to that reservoir of energies that can be used for the benefit of others. As our personalizations or personality formulas can handle an operation of a different frequency moving through us. To me, humanity, as any other species, is on any other planet, whatever, is being helped to learn how to help itself in the long run. It already has a tangled web help its now. I believe the skilled are more important than the ones on the bottom. And the tough ones, the ones who win in a war, are better than the ones who don't. And of course, everyone thinks they're going to win. Everybody doesn't win. The same is true on a daily basis. The one who makes their mark is considered a mark relative to others, of course, is more worthy than anyone else. That isn't how it is on a higher state. From my perspective. From my perspective, helping relates to energetic engagement. How can I help is what we say. How can there be help operate through for you, me, everyone else, for the purpose of honestly being helpful beyond our present concepts of target. This makes it very difficult for us to understand this idea, because we do target daily. We engage daily. This, if you have more knowledge than somebody else, according to your knowledge base, then you are more valued than somebody else. If you took 5 physicists who had different specialties and you brought them together and they worked as a team for a purpose, which they have done, they become focused on the purpose, not the personality. That is, if they can do that. Some can, some just can't. Some are just personalized, period, and they can't get out of it. Well, that is basically our world we're talking about. happens everywhere: politics, religion, science, like you name it, doesn't matter. This is difficult for us to even consider the possibility that higher states don't do that too. And I mean higher states. I'm not talking about little jumps just above us who are really fundamentally thinking that they're more important than us little people. And there are many who do that. That's part of a process. They're in a movement towards doing something different, as we are in a movement towards doing something different. No negation is involved with this. I'm not quite finished Carol's material, but I'll do it next time we meet, which will be, I think, next Thursday. I'll do a little bit more. But I think I've covered some of the material that she's asked about. And I wish everybody well. Stay healthy, please, the best you can. And we're going to meditate now. Now, since this is a little bit different tonight, what we're going to do is you meditate on your own, thinking of all people who are meditating and trying to be helpful to them, not in a way that you are helping them, no, asking for help for them, including you, the best you can. And I hope you have a tremendous meditation. And please take care, and we'll talk. I'll see you again next Thursday. You'll see me. Unfortunately, I won't see you. Please take care of yourself. Good night.